Hey, everyone. Are we suffering from a lack of confidence in IT resiliency? You're watching TechStrong, gang. Hey, happy Tuesday to you, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel for TechStrong, gang. You know, through the magic of the internet, you're watching this, but by the time you're watching this, there's a good chance I'll already be in Las Vegas for summer camp for hackers with a lot of my security friends for this week. But I've recorded this in studio before we left, and we've got a great Tuesday lineup here for our TechStrong gang. Let me introduce you to our gang members. Joining us, looking very dapper today, I might add, JP Morgenthal, Mitch Ashley, Mike Verzard returning from his hiatus. He thought he was going to be the next Yankees bullpen pitcher they were picking up, but no joy in Mudville. And then joining us from the land of Oz, where it's an ungodly hour where we're recording, Alastair Cooke. Hey, Alastair, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alan. It's always a pleasure to be on the show with you.
Beautiful. All right. So, Mike, let me kick things over to you on this beautiful Tuesday. We're going to start off with a report that we're not as confident in our resiliency and it's not just security, mind you. This is IT operational resiliency.
Well, and there is this new report from SolarWinds on that very topic. And it's interesting, at least from my perspective. We have a consumer confidence index all the time that we survey people with, but there should be something that's the equivalent of that for IT. And it looks like SolarWinds went out to try to accomplish that. And on the one hand, most IT people I know are confident in their own abilities. They have a certain amount of pride of ownership and pride of work. So they are always going to say that they are somewhat confident, but when you poke at it a little bit deeper, it does seem like, well, there are issues with inefficient workflows, not enough staffing, maybe I don't have the right tools, maybe I don't understand this AI stuff, and everything's changing faster than I'd like to admit. Mitch, what's your take on what's going on here? Is it the best of times or the worst of times, or is this the way times always are?
Well, I think we might have a new crop of therapists that IT people are talking with, and that's where we gathered this data, because that's kind of what the report basically held out as one of the issues. And I think, yeah, it's staffing and skills and things like that. But I think underlying all of this is the theme of we have to do more. More is expected of us. We don't necessarily know about the new stuff that's being thrown at us, and it's being thrown at us at a much faster rate. I think it's that pace of change and how much they're dealing with. And meanwhile, some pundit is telling you they're not going to have a job because of AI. So they're kind of like, what am I supposed to do here? So I think there's a lot of things that can be addressed. And I don't think there was anything new. It wasn't like, oh, that's a big surprise that the workflows are inefficient. Okay, great. Do you address that now, or do you work on AI and maybe use AI to make that better down the road? Do you work on improving security, or do you go work on your security skills? Maybe you do both. So it wasn't earth-shattering. I think it was more an amalgamation of a lot of issues, but underlying it, just trying to deal with it all.
So it was just the way it was phrased. But early on in the article, I think it's the first sentence, it talks about IT people referring to themselves as resilient. And the only thing that comes to mind in my mind is, does that mean that you recover well from trivia night after the team goes out and plays? I mean, what does it mean you're resilient? Your operations should be resilient. And the issue is, if that was the case, why do we, have such an initiative to chase after DevOps? And the whole fact that none of this addresses DevSecOps is bewildering to me, because that's where you get resiliency from. It's where you find your lean processes. It's where you identify your automation, and none of that's mentioned here. So I don't exactly understand what SolarWinds is trying to say here.
It's kind of ironic, because the survey also said 13% said that they lack the right tools. Well, that's kind of counter to what SolarWinds might want them to say. I stepped on you, Alan. Jump in, or Alastair, whoever.
No, I think that's fair. Mike,
Alastair,
you were going to say
good.
something.
Well, I'll leave it.
Well, I was just going to point out that, most IT people I know are kind of like Timex, right? They take a licking and keep on ticking, and that's all they're kind of like trying to answer here at the end of it. But I do believe that, this is a survey of traditional ITSM people who probably don't have a whole lot of DevOps experience, and maybe not enough of those folks who are in the survey base because that's not where SolarWinds normally plays. But it's clear to me that there is a lot of reliance on manual processes. People are somewhat, still doing the same thing the same way they've always done it because that's the only way they know.
And I think that continuing to do things the way you know how to do them does lead to the feeling that we don't know how to deal with these newer things. And so I think there's a definite crossover to JP's point that this doesn't address DevOps, DevSecOps types methodologies, but there is a huge swathe of enterprise IT that isn't DevSecOps, but simply because the transition from those years and years of legacy is so hard. Yet most of those are surrounded by little bits of innovation that bolt around the sort of sea anchor applications that don't change fast. And it's these elements that I think are terrifying for the engineers who've grown up with much slower moving things and take away their confidence they can recover.
Alan, I held a lot of compassion for these folks too, because operations, IT operations in particular, and SecOps too, they're the Scotties of engineering. And, Kirk's hollering down, I need warp drive in 60 seconds or we're all dead, right? Everything is an emergency and has got to be addressed this second.
That's resiliency. Well, look, I think these numbers are all made up. This was done just to embarrass me, and I want to fire the person who did the survey. Because that's what we do in America. But that being said,
I'm struggling to keep my arms down, but
that being said, I think the issue here goes to what you said, JP, about people thinking of themselves as resilient versus operationally resilient. Well, but I think when you're an IT person like this, your resiliency is your ability to keep operations going, right? And so they I forgot the word, but they put themselves in that. That's what, if operationally they're resilient. I think what this really comes to, though, I read an interesting article, I think it was in the Times this morning, about the changing work culture in tech, right? People used to want to flock to work in tech, whether it was Silicon Valley startup, chase the dream of stock options, or just being an ITSM tech worker who makes the internet work and makes all, is on the cutting edge of technology and all the cool stuff. The fact of the matter is, even though we have AI and we have all these great things going on around us, being a tech worker these days isn't a lot of fun. It's not. We're under increasing pressure to do more with less. We're all faced with layoffs, right? We're being told our job may or may not be around in the next 3 years because it's going to be replaced. And they want you to put on a happy face, smile, and say how resilient we are. And that shit don't fly. It's not going to fly for very long. And I think we're starting to see it now in surveys like this, where it's not just the security curmudgeons who are always unhappy. It's the IT people who are the bread and butter, the backbone of what makes the digital world go, starting to really feel the pressure that, you know what, this ain't fun no more. And I'm sad to say that, but I think we have to confront ourselves with that. May very well be a new reality. I'll leave it right there.
I'm hopeful it might get better if, these AI agents live up to their promise and the job itself could become a little more interesting and maybe things are a little more automated. And so maybe, there's hope on the horizon. I mean, I get that AI is also somewhat of a threat, but it seems to me there's still a lot more companies out there that don't have good IT talent. And so we'll just distribute it more widely. And this AI stuff may, at the end of the day, be a boon. I can argue.
You know, I put an article up on TechStrong AI. I saw an interview with Mark Benioff of Salesforce saying he's spoken to a lot of CEOs and he challenges them into show me jobs that were actually replaced by AI. By the same token, he's laid off, 7% of his workforce and says 50% of what they do. Seems to me Mark Benioff speaks with forked tongue there. What are we? Are we replacing people or are we augmenting people?
So I've been doing this, a lot, actually, working project right now, very deeply leveraging AI. And, it's an augmentative tool. It really, I see it as I'm doing a coding problem, right? And challenge. And so I see programming changing for me from actually having to write in the language to describe what I want the AI to do and the AI actually doing the coding. So I view it as a form of programming. It is that level. And it's the same thing the IT people have the opportunity to, right? It's instead of spending hours combing through logs and files looking for issues, right, with regard to a root cause analysis, and tools like SolarWinds and things like that, they're supposed to do a lot of the pre-processor work and hand you an answer. We know they don't. We know that that's the start, not the end, right? So if these people learn how to use these tools, they have the opportunity to then ask questions, right? Load up this data into and then ask the questions in an inquisitive way to get to the answer, instead of themselves having to chunk through the editors and look at all the individual line items. And it makes the experience a better experience, and it gets them to a faster answer.
Does it make them more resilient?
Yeah, this makes them more resilient. But the opportunity is there for them, is what I'm saying. It's it's a matter of learning to incorporate the tools, and it should be augmentative. It should not be replaced. I don't see these agents sitting there going, I got this problem, don't worry about it, it's all taken care of already.
You get agents going to say, forget about it. We got it here.
Only Mike's agents. Only Mike's, because he's from the Bronx. The Bronx.
Well, we talked about this yesterday, Alan, on the show, because I'd written the article about you still have to have engineering chops, right? And AI isn't ready to take on that level of the problem. And we talk about AI augmenting our work a lot. And when you dig down, I'm guessing probably what you're experiencing and what you're doing is you're directing, JT. You're telling it what you want to do. You're telling it what it's not doing. You're telling it what to do things differently. And prompt is the new code. All of that input in that process is kind of like you're in real time writing a requirements design document and building it all at the same time. And that's how it's changing the work. Now, I've talked a lot about the landing zone for AI and tech is software development. That's where we see the greatest application of it and the most impact. And it's starting to trickle into just a little bit of DevOps, some testing. We'll see more in ops. For example, Kubernetes. We've seen an observability move into Kubernetes. We'll see AI move into Kubernetes increasingly too to help it. It's not going to take it over and do it all for us, but that's got to take on some of the complexity of those tasks for us.
I know I've been away for a week and I've had a time to think about this a little bit. And we're big fans of IT, right? And we all love tech. But let's be honest, most of this stuff is overly complex and doesn't live up to the promise. And it's been great in the sense that it's job security for IT people. But working with this stuff on a day-to-day basis kind of sucks. And maybe AI is going to put a little pig on the lipstick or a little lipstick on the pig, sorry. But at the end of the day, a lot of the promises that have been made to IT people about all these IT platforms just didn't meet the grade. And so stuff is hard to deal with. Nothing's integrated. And it's stressful.
Mike, the days are long, but the years are short. And you might be looking among the trees and not seeing the forest. Let me see what other analogies I could come up with. But
I think Mike's flights have been delayed on his trip. He's a little angry.
But here's the deal. When you look across time, look across 25 years, look across 35 years, look across from the advent of the commercial internet till today, and how it has changed not just the IT worker's life, but how it's changed life on this planet. It's remarkable. And yes, the day-to-day, the inch by inch is tedious, sometimes discouraging. But when you look at the breadth of accomplishment and how it changes how we live, it's revolutionary. Now, that being said, I go back to what I said in the beginning of this segment. Tech workers did tech because they had, in their own way, an opportunity to change the world. It was a great professional work, and even if the day-to-day was somewhat tedious, even if building resiliency was more smoke and mirrors than true resiliency. When you strip that facade off, though, and just focus on the day-to-day and take away some of the carrots, good pay, great working conditions, job security, doing exciting things, then, yeah, it becomes a real job. Right? And that's not fun. Anyway, we're over time. Let's take a break on TechStrong Gang. We're going to come back here and talk about IT Unified. Well, we're going to talk about a recent Broadcom Tech Field Day TechStrong event. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking now about a Tech Field Day event that we had around VMware Cloud Foundation 9.0 that Alastair was one of the lead players on. And it relates to our previous topic in my mind because it really is about trying to make the IT experience maybe better. And some folks are at least making an attempt at it. But I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of parts in this thing too. So Alastair, what's the balance here? What's your take on what's going on? And bring us up to speed on the event.
Well, Mike, the event was the first real deep collaboration that we've had for a live event between Tech Field Day and TechStrong Group. TechStrong's our favourite part outside of Tech Field Day, our favourite part of Futurum Group, and we love working with you guys on lots of projects. This particular one happened last week. We streamed out a series of presentations from a series of technical experts at at Broadcom, VMware by Broadcom, starting, of course, with Sabina Anja, who was a guest here on the TechStrong Group a couple of weeks ago as a prelude to our live event. During the live event, or during the stream, we also had a bunch of the Tech Field Day delegates, and that's one of the things that makes Tech Field Day absolutely unique as an event, is that we invite in a bunch of independent technical experts who have their own opinions and things to share. People will be great guests here on the TechStrong Gang as well. And we have them interact with the presenters. So throughout the stream, you saw that my delegates were asking the presenters questions to get to a little more of the truth of what's happening in the real world and how these things are being used. And those same delegates also write about their thoughts, their opinions of what was being shown. So this was great to do this with TechStrong, and as we speak, this will be being live streamed on the Tech Field Day LinkedIn. So if you missed any of the live event last week, we've got a refresh stream now, but don't step away from this. Watch the rest of the TechStrong Gang. I did want to highlight and pull Mitch in here because he's been one of my delegates at events and will be a delegate at future events. And I wanted to pull in his opinion of how that sort of feeling of having this group of technical experts in the room with the presenters makes for a different kind of experience to a lot of the webinars and the presentations you see from vendors.
Yeah, I liken it to, and congratulations on a great event. I think the format that we did together was fantastic. I liken it to, don't you wish you were in one of those meetings that you didn't get invited to, where you just like to be a fly on the wall and kind of hear about the questions that were being asked? Because some of them I would have thought of, and a lot of them I wouldn't have thought to ask, but that's a great question. And they aren't gotcha questions. It's not like we're trying to make anybody look bad. It's like different perspectives, and that's one of the things about the delegates is they're not all copies of one kind of person or one kind of role or kind of whatever. They come from a heavy networking, heavy operations, heavy development, heavy AI, whatever it might be, type of background. So they've got different perspectives. And I think it was really timely to do this with Broadcom because of their announcements of essentially kind of revitalizing, I call it the 2.0 of VMware. It's the next era of VMware, moving it into the self-service model, which I wish I would have had when I was running IT about a little more than a decade ago. Because I was looking for something like that and we hadn't gotten there yet. So it was a really good time to have that kind of a deep dive in several different areas. And it wasn't just about that. But I think hearing from the experts, both the delegates and the presenters, gives you a better rounded perspective as opposed to just going to a conference and hearing one person speak about it.
What is the level of self-service there? Because sometimes I feel like, it's self-service in the Henry Ford way, right? As long as the car is black and, costs this much, you can have it. So what are we actually giving to folks as self-service, and how much flexibility is there in that model?
Well, what I saw in the new release of VMware Cloud Foundation 9 is that integration into the VCF automation, what used to be called ARIA automation. And that's got a capability to differentiate this persona of the cloud consumer and give them a catalog of things they can deploy. Now, those things can be pre-built virtual machines. They can be entire Kubernetes cluster. There are pre-configured services that sit on top of those Kubernetes clusters. And so this feels to me a lot like a tool for building an internal developer platform, where here's the catalog of things that you can deploy, and wrapped around that catalog is not just you can deploy it onto some test environment. There's data operations in here as well. We can make sure your data is protected. You can make sure that maybe you're running a CI/CD pipeline to populate out all of the executables that are in here, along with maybe it is a test environment and there's a lease time for it. You're only allowed this amount of resource for a fixed period of time. So there's definitely maturity coming into that portal. Is it the same sort of scale we see in the major public cloud providers? Absolutely not. There isn't the diversity of services. There isn't the scale that you see, the elasticity that you see in public cloud platforms. On the other hand, this is inside your own data center. It's on your own hardware, and your ability to control all of the compliance and all of the security around this is much stronger, at least more ability to directly control what you want. So yes, it is consumed from a catalog, so it is, here's the sizes that are available, but hopefully there's more than one engine size and more than one color available. But it is still on-premises resource, so it is a limited scale.
But this new version of VMware can be run in a public cloud. It's supported by AWS and Google and Microsoft. And I'll tell you something else. They've borrowed a lot, I guess, from Tanzu, right, to make it much more cloud native kube friendly, usable. To me, this release is literally a Swiss Army knife, right? It has something in there, no matter how you want to use it, whether it be on-prem, whether it be in a data center or the public cloud, and whether it be cloud native, Kubernetes containerized or not. This is a very usable, broadly usable platform now, and I kudos to them for doing it.
It's also a transitionary or a hybrid environment too, Alan, not just on-prem and in the cloud, but it's meant for workloads that are both on traditional VMware hypervisor type of
And
architecture as
that's where
well
the
as
world's
Kubernetes,
going,
right?
multi and
That's where the world's
hybrid.
going.
So, Alistair, is it your sense that the mere mortal IT administrator can now manage Kubernetes, or is this more about just provisioning it, but I still need DevOps engineers to make that puppy run for the long haul?
I've always been of the opinion that Kubernetes is an infrastructure tool, that the same people who are looking after virtual machines are just delivering now Kubernetes clusters. And that's to a certain extent what we see here is that what was the Tanzu Kubernetes grid, whatever the branding was, is now called the VMware Kubernetes service inside Cloud Foundation. And yeah, you can deploy yourself a Kubernetes cluster, and the worker nodes are easy to deploy, and the updates and changes, those have always been the nightmare of that coordinated update of all of the plugins and components before you can do the kube update itself. These things are all packaged together in a more controlled way, and like most Kubernetes platforms, it's a N-2 support within the platform, so there's you don't have to immediately update, but when the administrator makes it available, you as the owner of the cluster can choose to update. Does this completely abstract understanding Kubernetes and the networking complexity and manage storage for it and volumes and all of those elements? Absolutely not. There's still Kubernetes underneath this. You're still hitting kubectl commands here and there, although there's tools in the actual automation to generate those manifests, those YAML manifests to deploy things for you. So there is some guidance in it, but I think you still need to understand what Kubernetes is as an infrastructure tool to get the best out of that hybrid, multi-platform, modern applications kind of melange that we have now.
Fair. Guys, it was a great event. I should mention it's still available on demand. Go to techstrongerevents.com. You could grab it there. Eventually, it will make its way to the Tech Field Day YouTube channel and TechStrong TV. But right now, it is available on demand. You go check them out, all the various sessions and so forth. So go do that. We're going to take a break here on The Gang. Come back, and we're going to talk about expanding AI agents framework. Shocking. You're watching TechStrong, Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking about AI agent frameworks. Once again, it seems like there's a lot of these all of a sudden, and we're discussing specifically one that was donated by Cisco to the the Linux Foundation. And those folks are going to add another framework to the ones they already support from Google, which is the A2A protocol, which kind of sits as a complement to MCP. But I think this one's a little more identity focused. But JP, I'd love to get your thoughts here, because it's kind of like, on the one hand, I'm like, this is great. There's another standard that we can use. And then I'm like, oh no, there's another standard we can use. And is the Linux Foundation thing going to start to look like the CNCF framework all over again? What's going on here?
Well, I mean, these things do follow consistent patterns. Just people are, I liken it to, you remember the old maze games on PCs where you didn't know what was in the room until you went through into a section and it lit up that section, and then you could see what was in that part of the room. And that's kind of the way the last 5 major shifts in technology have operated. And this is a lot of people, things like this happened in XML, happened in web services, happened in cloud. These standards emerge as people try to make sense of the part of the room that they're in that's lit up. Oh, look, we need one of these. Oh, look, we need one of these. And obviously different skills and different focus areas are going to have different perspectives, right? There's one's coming out of Cisco. So lo and behold, it's secure communications is going to be a core element that they've recognized is lacking, and the ability to have these autonomous agents communicating with one another, right? How do we ensure that they authorize, that they authenticate to each other properly? How do we have a common framework for them to exist and not be hacked? How do we control the actual communication pathways between them, right? How do we label them? How do we name them? How do we find them when they're existing out on the network? And so at this point in time, right, this is a group of companies answer that they've obviously convinced a good group of core AI leaders that this is a potentially valuable project, right? You have the likes of Google, Salesforce, Microsoft, Amazon, ServiceNow, Adobe jumping on board, right, with this release. And so clearly the people in those organizations who are associated with their individual AI efforts and in standards efforts recognize that there's something valuable here. And so now the question becomes, well, and this is the more difficult one, is as these things start to emerge, how do you incorporate them in, right? Because they're leaking out, and you have individuals who are building architecture. They're building agent architectures today. Okay, great. The last thing you want is, oh, this new toy came out today, let me add this, which we have seen. And Lord knows that's how you end up with a huge amount of your tech debt coming into a new application, right? Is that the early part of that of your tech debt, initiative starts with the fact that it was new when you started and you threw all this stuff as it emerged at the problem domain. Oh, look, here's some observability. Let's throw that in. Oh, look, here's some authentication. Yeah, let's put that in. And you get to a point where nobody really wants to spend the money to say, okay, all the pieces are in place. They're pretty solidified now. We should probably redo this, right? And so that is my concern as these things start to leak out, is that they find their way into a project. They get used, and then they're not refactored in later on. Hopefully now that it's easier to refactor code using AI agents, companies will take that opportunity to do that more. But this is where we are as an industry, and agency has as much of a chance of being a home run as it does a foul ball.
Mitch, I mean, I looked at this stuff and clearly there's a need for agency, but I also scratched my head and I was like, well, shouldn't this just be part of A2A in the first place? And we should just take these capabilities and it should be one project. And I'm not clear we need a whole other project around this thing, or is this just like the next natural evolution of A2A? I don't know, but I'm a simple guy.
Well, one of the benefits of being part of Linux Foundation, or one of its subs, if foundations, if you will, is we may see something like open telemetry merging with open tracing. Maybe they do come together at some point, but it's early enough along. I don't think you want big standard, even open standards efforts, because they'll get bogged down. They'll kill it by the weight of itself. If it isn't quite this cleanly, but if you look at who started it, it makes sense why they started it, right? MCP got started by Anthropic, and it was all about giving their models and other models access to data and systems outside of the model. When you look at A2A, that was initiated by Google. That's about agents talking to themselves, collaborating, communicating. So kind of another layer down in the stack, if you want to think of it that way. Guess what? Speaking of stacks, this one's by Cisco. So guess what it has? It relies on Agent Communication Protocol, which is another new emerging standard. It has identity management. It adopts an OSAF framework, Open Agent Schema framework. OAS. It's too early in the morning. I can't say it. Anyway, it adopts yet another standard that I can't spit out all at once in one sentence without taking a breath. So it's another layer. It's a kind of a more deeper layer in the stack. And we're going to see more of this. There's Agent DNS. There are other things that are in the pipeline that I think will might not only see emerge and become adopted, but they'll also start to combine where it makes sense. But for now, I think we need it fragmented.
If you look at the pattern, especially around distributed computing, the last 4 major, evolutions of key technologies in this space, they're just recreating the operating system.
At some level.
So does this happen naturally over time, or are there a bunch of folks in a smoke-filled room making trades, or how's this?
No, that's a jaded, this isn't politics, Mike, or how our government runs, right? I think what we have going on here is this is like a Cambrian explosion of life forms, right? This is Darwinism, technical Darwinism. I coined that phrase. Give me credit for that. This is technical Darwinism at work. You're going to see a lot of these frameworks competing, cooperating, co-opetitioning, vying for air and space in this crowded market. And, for those of us who still believe in a market system, the best will rise to the top and become dominant, and those that don't will fall by the wayside. That's the way it should work. Now, you could take the Mark Andreessen approach, which says if I put $100 million into this one, even though it may not be the best, it'll have enough resources, it'll Windows the OS2, so to speak, right? We'll do better marketing and everything else, and it may not be as good in OS as OS2 was, but the world will focus on Windows. We might see that here because projects that are given to the Linux Foundation, the CNCF, might have a leg up on projects that aren't part of a foundation, that have a single big brother sponsor. But it's Darwinism. It's technological Darwinism, and hopefully the best succeed.
It's almost like the formation of the universe, the Big Bang, right? At this many fractions of a fraction of a fraction, these elements were formed, right? As it progresses and grows. And I think it's just emblematic of no one is dominating in this industry, right? There isn't a dominant player yet, whether it's in the LLMs or the agent. There will be, right? But because there isn't, everybody's contributing through open standards instead of saying, my proprietary API and my proprietary framework. We'll see those things come along. But by the way, the open part is happening on these kinds of standards. Where it's not happening yet is on the data side. That's why I'm stumbling through that acronym. But at the same time, we see these open standards. Some vendors are starting to lock down their data so that other people's models can't get access to your data in their SaaS service, whatever it might be. That we've got to stop. Because that's my data. I mean, it's no more frustrating. I won't name the vendors' names. If I can't get my data out of the CRM system to do what I want to do with it, I've got to work with it within the confines of that one product. And that's not just CRMs or one CRM that's that way. But I think that's going to be the next battle.
I think you're spot on, and that will be an entire topic this week. So stay tuned on that one. But I would just point out one last thing about all of this is that the pace of innovation is a lot faster than it used to be. So by the time we wake up in 3-4 months from now, or is the A2A crowd going to figure out that they need most of the things in these things and have done something about it and put it in code? My money said yes.
Well, it goes along with the technical Darwinism, right? Technology Darwinism, because you have mutations that are accelerating with AI that at a speed that was not plausible when run by humans.
Yeah, it's true. All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this great TechStrong Gang today. Thank you for watching. As usual, we have TechStrong TV immediately following. We will be back on tomorrow, Wednesday, with another great show. I won't be on that one. But Mike, I guess you'll be driving the bus?
Right
And-
off the cliff, man.
All right. Alastair, again, thank you for getting up at the ungodly hour in New Zealand to join us. JP, Mitch, talk to you soon. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong. Have a great day, everyone. We're out.